Astrology is the myths of the stars and planets, telling the themes and plots of our lives. These stories come to us daily through our satellite, the Moon. She is constantly spinning astro news. Hi, I'm Marilyn LeBlanc with Moonwise. Astrologer Daniel Fiverson joins me today. I've asked him to show us what an evolutionary astrology reading looks like, and I've also mentioned that we could look at Elizabeth Warren's chart and demonstrate how he approaches an astrological consultation. Welcome back to Moonwise, Daniel.
Thank you, Marilyn.
So, first of all, let's take a look at evolutionary astrology. What's the driving force in that type of astrology?
Well, the driving force is that what we're looking at is what I call the journey of the soul from lifetime to lifetime. So, what we have to understand is that there is something that came before, and that's what we're going to kind of understand what's manifesting in the present in correlation to the past, and if we have time, even to the future. What we're really looking at, on a larger scale, is the soul incarnates into time and space to experience itself. All of our individual lifetimes are really the outreach, if you would, of the soul in order for the soul to learn about itself. And in each lifetime, we learn about ourselves. That's why we're here. We're here to learn and to become more conscious and to grow into who it is that we've intended to become. And the line of progression sounds relatively simple, but it's a very long road because what we're talking about is the separation of soul from source. And the best analogy that I can use that I think exists is the concept of the ocean and a wave. We can look at source as an ocean, and the ocean contains everything. It's all-inclusive. It has no boundaries. It is all that is. And from that ocean, a single wave arises out of it and separates from the ocean. And that that wave correlates to the soul. And in that act of separation, it actually believes that it's separate. It forgets the fact that it's part of the ocean. It thinks it's just the wave. And so we come into time and space in each incarnation thinking we are the wave. For the most part, we forget that there is a source, that there is an ocean, that's what we've come from. But deep within us, we do hold that knowledge. And so our evolutionary path is along that line of separating from source and experiencing all that source needs to experience in time and space to understand about itself. And it saturates itself with every kind of separating experience, whatever that can be, whether that's love or money or food or travel or power or control or all the things that exist, all of the things that we can pursue in a lifetime. We saturate ourselves over many lifetimes with each gender being male, being female, being mother, father, sister, brother. We experience everything that we can possibly experience, and that's why we have to have so many lifetimes. And we reach a point in all these experiences, I call it the law of saturation, where we suddenly realize that there's something else besides all of these experiences, that we're not just the wave, that we are the source. And we begin to turn a corner and begin to come back and manifest experiences that are more of a return and a reconnection than separating. So this is kind of the overall pattern that we're looking at. The other thing that's important is that our birth chart could be for a home, it could be a business, it could be an animal, it could be a project, it could be a person. And of that person, it could be someone who excuse me, I'll back up for 1 second. There's one other important piece here, is that along this line of progression from separation to reconnection, is we move through different states of consciousness. If we understand and agree that evolution is real and an ongoing process, then we came up from the animal kingdom. And the soul is a security-based individual. It's all about security. And obviously security is a big word. It means something different to everybody. For one person, it's money. For another, it's love, it's relationship, whatever. It's what makes us feel safe. And in the animal kingdom, safety, security is the herd. So when we first come up out of the animal kingdom into consensus reality, which is the first evolutionary state, what we want is to be part of the herd. That the safety is to be like everybody else. How do I get ahead? How do I play the game? How do I get what everybody else has? And in each of these three states that I'm going to describe, there are actually three different substates. All of this is on my website, for evolution, the number 4 evolutionary.com. You can get all the details. In the third upper layer of the consensus state are the people running the world. They've not only learned how to play the game, they're making the rules. But we reach the top of that consensus state, which represents about 70% of the people on the planet, which explains a lot. We get to the point where we have the money, we have the power, we have the boats, we have the planes, we have everything that we can imagine the material existence can supply, and yet we still don't feel secure. There must be something else. And when that must be something else begins to take over, we move into what Carl Jung called an individuated state, where we recognize that, yes, I'm like everybody else, but I'm not. I have certain abilities and creative talents and things that make me unique. What happens here is, and again, as I describe all this, this is not like it's a keyboard, if you can imagine. If we imagine this evolutionary spectrum, where we're not playing a single note, we're not just a consensus, we're not just individuating, or we're not in the third stage, which is spirituating, which I'll describe in a minute. We're playing different points across this entire spectrum, like a piano, like chords on a piano. We may have a couple of part of us that's still in consensus. We may have most of us that's individuating and evolving into who we truly have intended to become. And then there's part of us that really is ready or wanting to find out about reconnecting and just reemerging with the whole and doing the total Pisces thing. But this is what we're moving along. So as we move through the individuated state, consensus correlates to Saturn and Capricorn, and it correlates to our conditioning and to what we've picked up from our parents and the culture that we live in, and it's like an onion skin, all the layers of conditioning that we've developed. When we move into individuated, we start to lose some of that conditioning. We start to recognize that, yes, I'm not like my mother, I'm not like my father, I'm different than my brother, I'm me, and we begin to develop that. And we recognize in consensus there's man-made law. It's very, very much set in stone. Men marry women, and all the consensus rules that we all agree to. Certainly, we want to agree that we stop at a red light on the corner and we don't kill other people. But beyond that, there are certain rules that and laws that necessarily are moral judgments that somebody else has determined, and maybe they're not really a law. And we begin to realize that there's a natural law as well. And when we live according to those natural laws, which were expressed in the Ten Commandments or the Hermetic Principles, or many of the spiritual technologies or doctrines of the ages, we begin to recognize that that we are connected to something much greater than ourselves, and we start to spiritualize. 20% of the population are in that individuated state. At the top of the individuated state are the artists, the poets, the musicians, the truly creative people who are connected to that something greater than themselves in some way, and are able to pull it down and show it to us and say, hey, there's something else out there. 5% of people on the planet historically have been spiritualized, and these are the handful of saints who, because of the tremendous geometric power of consciousness, have upheld the planet in its entire history.
Is there any way in a chart that you can actually tell? No.
This does not exist in the chart. You don't know this until the client sits down in front of you and starts to talk. I ask everybody who comes to me for a reading, I ask them, what is it you would like to know about? if they tell me when am I going to, meet my soulmate, or when am I going to win the lottery, or, when am I going to, get my dream house, then I get an idea of where they're headed. And that's okay. Most of the people who come for readings are individuating into spiritualizing. And most of us there's a liminal space between these states where most of us live. We don't live in one or the other. We kind of float. It's very fluid.
What do you mean by spiritualizing?
Living according to natural law. It's not religious. The religions are all back in consensus. Okay.
So, example?
Patriarchy.
Example?
Of
living according to natural law.
That there's only one of us on the planet, that we love each other, that there is a sense of brotherhood and community, and we're all in this together. That cooperation, not competition.
Right. Well, that takes me to actually, there's just like one basic commandment that you find in biblical scriptures, and my translation of it is living according to what's good for me, what's good for others, and what's good for the planet.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. So I just I wanted to know if you distinguish any of that.
So the point of all this is that this context is important, because that determines how the chart is going to express itself. Two babies born side by side, in incubators in the hospital, end up having totally different life paths, and this is why. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
You're listening to Moonwise here on KSFR 101.1 FM. I'm Mary Lynn LeBlanc with my guest, Daniel Fiverson. We're going to go to the Moon Minute, and then we'll probably get into an example of reading a chart according to an evolutionary astrologer. Don't forget also that you can always listen or share podcasts of this show by going to our website, ksfr.org. Press that program tab at the top of the page, and the drop-down menu will show you podcasts, and you can find Moonwise and listen to this show and other shows here on KSFR. So here's the Moon Minute. We'll be back shortly. Welcome back to Moonwise. I'm Mary Lynn LeBlanc with my guest, Daniel Fiverson. We're talking about evolutionary astrology today, which is a process, a perspective of interpreting people's charts. You don't interpret other kinds of charts based on evolutionary astrology, or do you? Like, for example, the United States chart?
You can. Any chart can be looked at it from that perspective.
My cat's chart?
Why, sure, because you can understand the psychology of your cat and understand why she does some of the things that she does. Where's her sun? Where's her moon? What's her Mars?
Okay, Daniel. Well, are there other things that you want to say about evolutionary astrology in general before we get into a look at Elizabeth Warren's chart?
Well, I think that's pretty good. All like I said, all of this is on my website, for the number 4 evolutionaryastrology.com. You can read more about it. Certainly, or come to me, and you can see how this works directly for you. But this is it's about the context. There's no cookbook astrology. That's what's important. And I think that the greatest drawback to people understanding and accepting astrology as a viable, it's the oldest of the mantic arts. It's the core thread behind Kabbalah and Tarot. It's older than any of it. It's important to understand that the chart works according to these principles. There's no cookbook, and you can't pick up a book and say, I have my sun in Cancer and I'm XYZ, and it's why people say, no, I'm not like that, because it's way more complex.
Exactly.
Right. So we begin with Pluto, because working with what came before, Pluto is the soul. Pluto does correlate to what came before. It's our DNA. It's our karma. It holds the life lessons that we have worked on in previous lifetimes and what it is that we're continuing to work on in this lifetime. It's always a continuation. We never go backwards. Any of that stuff. You're not going to turn into a tree or turn into a dog. That's a belief that's out there. You want to have it. It's okay. I'm not going to tell you what to believe. But we're constantly moving forward. That's what evolution is all about. We're going to go forward whether we want to go or not, which is why Pluto is so difficult and why everybody is, always in fear of Pluto transits, because Pluto is going to push us. It is the evolutionary engine itself. So if we look at Elizabeth's Pluto, we don't have her time of birth. It's not published. We don't know what time she was actually born. Here's the birth data. If anybody wants to also look at the chart themselves, she was born on June 22nd, 1949 in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. I'm using a noon chart because we've got the best shot at where the moon might have been. And I'm using what's known as an Aries rising chart rather than an ascendant because this places each planet in its natural house. So we have the correct archetypes rather than trying to guess, where this is going to play out. We know what these archetypes are going to look like. So this is Pluto in Leo. And what we know about Leo, it's ruled by the sun. It's the most creative of all of the archetypes. It's the second of the fire signs. It's where we actually begin to actualize into our personality. We're born in Aries, if you would. It's totally instinctive. We come into the world. In Leo, this is where we start to literally flesh out our personality. And it's where we need to, where we're actually creating ourselves. So it's about self-creation. So she's very much, in charge of who she wants to be in the world and who she wants to become. It's her core mission is really to guide her own ship through these waters. Her sun is in Cancer, which is the dispositor of this Pluto. So it's the first time we're going to see the moon's influence in this chart. The moon's influence is threaded throughout this chart very strongly, and it's one of the reasons why I've come to understand why she has seemed to be so middle of the road for so much of her political career, because safety is what's important to her. She has become extremely progressive, but when she first went into politics from 1991 to 1996, she was a registered Republican because she felt that voting for both parties was actually going to help the electoral system, was better politically. But she came to realize that the GOP was not really supporting any of the principles that she supported. But she does come across almost as kind of middle of the road, though she is very progressive, but she kind of wants to hold that middle space. And I think that this is all the Cancerian influence, which comes through her Pluto.
And also through her moon in Taurus.
Well, certainly through her moon in Taurus. Yeah, we haven't quite. Yeah.
Right.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, both of those signs, Cancer and Taurus, have a great need for security.
Exactly. And Pluto is squaring her moon. So in evolutionary astrology, the moon is about our emotional self-reliance. Her moon's in Taurus to begin with. Taurus is about self-reliance, capital S. Moon is about emotional self-reliance. So with Pluto square the moon, it's very important for her to be able to come from a place of authentic emotional validity. She has to feel that her emotions are matching what it is that she's pursuing in the world, that how she's actualizing herself, that she has to be emotionally in line. And it's a square. It's not easy because she's building something. This is the squares and oppositions, and I think Jason Holley has talked about this. The squares and oppositions, and Jeffrey Green talked about it too, are really what gets things to happen. It's really how we create something. The trines are very facilitating and can help us, but we have to actually proactively go out to meet them.
Right, and the square here is a last quarter square. And I know I talked about this, was it last week? I lose track of when. And just recently on Moonwise, I talked about one of the distinctions between the first quarter and the last quarter. And the last quarter, it really involves us to question our assumptions, what we thought was the way to go. For example, her becoming a Republican and then realizing, questioning that. and making a shift. That's very much last quarter as versus first quarter kind of.
Yeah. It's what Dane Rudhyar called it the crisis in consciousness, where we recognize that there's some understanding that we have that's not getting met, and we need to make some kind of a conscious change here to come into alignment. So just moving along here, just to keep up, she's got a very tight semi-square to her Sun conjunct Uranus. Well, that Sun conjunct Uranus really reflects that progressive nature of who she is. This is her. I want to jump back to the Moon for a minute because we've got Sun Uranus also in Cancer. Her early childhood. One of the tenets of evolutionary astrology is this concept, this principle that we pick up where we left off, that our early childhood is the emotional template, the emotional reliving, reminder of where we left off in our past life. We don't remember the physical, the actual details of the life, but that emotional imprint that we carry away by the age of 7 holds the entire message of everything that we have brought into the world with us. Well, she described her childhood as living on the fringes of poverty. Her father was a maintenance man. Everybody worked. There was terrible shortages and scarcity. And this is why she has come to develop this tremendous interest in family issues. She's family-centered. She cares about other people. She cares about the basics of life. And it came from all these early childhood experiences. That's who she is. And that's how all this Cancer energy is threaded through her personality. That's how it's all expressing because of what her childhood taught her. And so first we see her Sun already, in this semi-square to Pluto. We by the time we get done with Pluto, if we have time to finish, you will see that we've touched on all the salient points of this chart, that and the lunar nodes and the rulers of the lunar nodes. I don't know how much time we have left.
That's 5 minutes.
Yeah, not much. Maybe we can continue this, in our next session, because the way that this process works is by the time we move through Pluto and its aspects, and then we look at the lunar nodes, because the lunar nodes, the south node is the composite of all of our previous egocentric structures, all of our previous moons. It's our default habitual place to go. And the ruler of that south node tells us what those lifetimes were about. Well, the ruler for south node is Venus, and it's Venus in Libra, in Libra, Venus in Cancer, excuse me. So she has a mutual reception between the Moon, and Venus, which is the ruler for South Node. That's a very, very powerful combination, which keeps her embedded in all this karmic history that she has brought here with us. She's compelled. There's this intense pressure. She has there's a square. Oh, she's got
Venus squares her nodes too.
Well, Venus is also semi-squaring Saturn. There's this pressure of these priorities, these values, these things that are really important to her. It's what she lives for. She can't be on the planet and not be talking about what she's talking about. She was just born to do this.
Mm-hmm. Well, with the Venus squaring her nodes, that also speaks to a karmic need to address.
Yes.
If I'm interpreting it according to evolutionary astrology, to address her leadership, actually, as a woman. As one of the elements.
I think that's probably true, yes. Planets square the nodes in EA are what are called a skipped step. And it's something that, for whatever reason, there's no judgment here, it got passed over. It's some priority that the soul had in the past that was either denied by itself or by someone else, or was just too challenging, whatever. But when it comes up as a square in this lifetime, this pressure, it's compelling. It's going to be addressed. Venus is what's important to us. It's where our values are. It's really the determinant of all of our choices, is what comes up with our Venus placement. It's all of the values and all of the principles that we live by. But you're absolutely right. It's squaring the nodes. It's very compelling. She also has Jupiter squaring the nodes, which is and Mars is making a semi-square and a sesqui-square, which aren't a full square, but they're also there's tremendous pressure from all her inner planets on those nodes to evolve into this person who will be the messenger. She is a living messenger. She's got Pluto conjunct Pallas Athena. Pallas is the informer. She's here to tell us what it is that she's telling.
Daniel, I know there's so much more we could say about Elizabeth, and especially her role as a woman, because when I looked at this chart, I saw that she plays just like AOC and the Squad. She plays a major role in women becoming equal voices, equal power here in the United States, et cetera. Daniel, you're a member of NCGR. This is an astrology group. Tell us a little bit about it and what's going on these days so that folks in town who are interested in astrology might check you guys out.
Sure. We're part of an international global group. It's the National Council of Geocosmic Research. And it's been around a long time, and it's really about the study and dissemination of astrological education. So we have an active chapter here. We bring in speakers literally from around the world, locally. We sponsor events. We have meetings bi-monthly. And we invite anyone who's listening to come and, check us out if you have interest in talking about astrology, learning about astrology, even, perhaps even becoming an astrologer. This is a good place to start. We are a fee-based organization, but it's a modest fee once a year, and we really believe that the benefits far exceed any of the costs. We have great participants: Jason Holly, Mike and Michael Bartlett. Some really well-known people come and speak to us and are part of the group. So I really encourage you to check us out.
People from all over the world. I had Alex Trenoweth, who's from England, speaking last week here on Moonwise. So contacting you would be a way they could find out more about it? What's your contact information?
You can reach me at my website, 4 evolutionaryastrology.com. You can call me 930-2748 or Daniel at 4evolutionaryastrology.com.
Well, Daniel, thank you so much for this. We're going to continue talking about evolutionary astrology and Elizabeth Warren and maybe some of the other politicians as we continue having Moonwise on the air on Saturday mornings. All of you out there have a great weekend. Stay tuned for Climate One. This is KSFR White Rock Santa Fe Public Radio.